Alright, so hello everyone and welcome back to another video. So today we have a special little video because I have an interview here with two of the main developers of Phantom Forces, also COR. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Hey, my name is Axisangle.
Hello everyone, my name is Litozinnamon, and yeah, we are the main programmers for Phantom Forces and COR.
Alright, great. So I guess we'll just start with the questions, and I'm gonna start with the first one here, which I feel like is pretty relevant, and that is, what happened to the name Call of Robloxia, and why will it only be called COR?
Yeah, I think Harrison can handle this one.
Alright, so the first thing is Call of Robloxia is a direct parody of Call of Duty, so already there's some questions like, is this
Yeah.
allowed? Do we want to still be holding ourselves back to like the Call of Duty franchise and kind of piggyback off of them? So we don't really want to do that anymore. And also the Roblox has the new policy of like not including Roblox in branding, just so people can move away from like the Roblox imagery and like they can still use Roblox professionally as a engine and publishing platform. That's kind of what they want. But there's still like the name history with Call of Roblox at 5, and what we're making is essentially a spiritual successor to that. So we decided to call it COR. People kind of know what COR means if they know the history of it. And then we started like looking into what COR might stand for in other languages, and it turns out it means heart in Latin.
Oh, okay.
So then we started like looking into other names. Our actual full name for this project is going to be COR Fidelis, and there are several reasons why this actually works out with the double meaning. So Fidelis is it means faithful, and it also is tied to the Marines' motto Semper Fidelis, which means always faithful. So there's a bit of history there, and we want to kind of tie it back into that. And calling it COR Fidelis actually means Heart of the Faithful. It's kind of a cool name.
Yeah.
And it still keeps the core like abbreviation for Call of Robloxia. So now like there's multiple layers here. I think that's kind of the name we're gonna move forward with.
Yeah, that sounds really good, honestly. When do you think the alpha will be released, and will it be paid access?
Okay, so the alpha, I guess the question is, what is an alpha, what is a pre-alpha, what's a beta, and what's a full release?
Yeah.
Because I think there's, like, these things mean different things to different people in different development groups. But for us, what we have right now is like, it's like a tech demo. And,
Yeah.
we have free and open access to the tech demo. Anybody can play it at any time. It's just it's a test bench. It's actually not even the final version of the framework. I'm currently working on rewriting the framework a 5th time, and then we'll port the content over. But the definition of pre-alpha that we're going for is pre-alpha is when we have all of the, or almost all of the framework in a playable state, in a usable state, but we don't have things like customization. We don't have things like maybe not even weapons are totally customizable. There are still many things with content that need to be worked out. Maybe there's not even game modes, right?
Yeah.
And then I don't know when we'll be to that stage, probably maybe 2 months from now. And then an alpha is when we have all the pipelines, or almost all the pipelines for content, and using it and making it. We just don't have very much of it at all. And then a beta is kind of just before the final release, where it's basically a playable game, but we just want to tune it a bit more before we actually push it out. And so let's see, this the pre-alpha state, I think, will be there in maybe 2 or 3 months, and then that will be sometime around then, that will be when we switch to like the paid version. So I think we'll do probably 1,000 Robux, so that way we kind of keep this what is it, kind of keep fewer players in it, so that way people don't get bored of it,
Yeah.
before we actually release the game. And anyway, over time we'll slowly release release new features and new updates and whatever, and reduce the price until it's basically free. And then anybody can get into it, and that's probably when we'll hope that it'll blow up. But yeah, pre-alpha probably 2 or 3 months, an actual alpha maybe 5 months, and then a beta. I don't really know. It would be nice to get it out summer of next year, but I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But it's all up in the air.
What other features will the game have that Phantom Forces want? And what was the hardest feature to implement out of all of these, I guess?
Oh,
all right,
sorry.
Trey, go for it, Trey. This Axis.
Okay, so most of the features that are in core are actually not visible to the user. I mean, they will be, but like players will think, oh, why aren't there many hackers? Why is nobody flying around? Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And and why do we have so many more why do we have equipment and whatever? And so the reason why is because there are a lot of pieces of technology that we've created and incorporated into COR's design to one, give us more control, more design control over how the game feels, and two, to prevent hackers and whatnot from actually being able to ruin others' experiences. Though there's still some work to be done with like detecting aimbots and things, but the silent aim will go away. And of course, Lito has done a lot of work on this to design, to incorporate programming features and methodologies into his work that will allow him and me and others to more easily implement new features and different kinds of, I don't know, like equipment and respawn and whatever.
Yeah.
Another thing that I don't know, there's so much tech that we've incorporated. So like all the guns now, they step at an infinite frame rate. Basically, the gun. So for example, let's break down what happens whenever you reload a firearm. So first, what happens is you recognize that the cat, please down. Don't burn yourself. There's a camera.
Yeah, we have cats.
So first you realize that you're down to 0 ammunition in the gun, or maybe not. Maybe you still have one in the chamber, and then you start playing a reload animation. And throughout the course of the reload animation, the gun the state of the gun actually is getting updated and changed. So not only the gun model state is being changed, also the internal state of the logic is getting updated. So when you remove the magazine, now if it's a closed bolt gun, you have 1 round in the chamber, and the magazine is outside of the gun, so you can still shoot that round off. And so if you decide to do that, now you don't have a round in the chamber anymore, and you need to do extra steps after the end of the animation to make sure that your gun's actually back into a state of being able to fire. So you take the magazine out, you throw the magazine away, like maybe you very quickly take the rounds out of the magazine, which is ridiculous, but that's what we have. And you put them into another magazine, you take the new magazine, put it back into the gun, and then maybe you have to chamber the weapon if you fire the weapon, or if you did an empty reload with no with a closed bolt gun. And the thing is that in a traditional engine, or in Phantom Forces, for example, and every other game on Roblox, what happens is if you're running at a low frame rate, let's say something ridiculously low, like 1 frame per second, you are going to step your weapon state once per frame. And so what this means is that if you take your magazine out and put it back in the time such that you would need to have 2 updates in a single frame for that to happen, that won't actually happen, and it'll have to delay an extra frame before it can get that state, put the magazine back into the gun and get that gun state updated to where it needs to be. And what we've done is we've gone to a frameless design. So basically, instead of having the game instead of the like the frame rate tell us when we can update things, we have put a system in between that where the gun can tell the overall system when it needs to be updated. So if it needs to be updated, rapidly, like for example, let's say we have a minigun, and maybe you only run at 300 frames per second. But this minigun is like insanely stupid and we're running at a high frame rate or something. And so it actually is firing. No, let's say that you're running at 30 frames per second, like on a console.
Yeah.
And so you have a minigun and it fires, 50 rounds per second, which is insane. It's just like the frame rate is close to the number of rounds that you're shooting per second. Then you have like weird, like I'm sure that as a video editor, you know what this is, where you have a video that's recorded at 24 frames per second, and you're trying to fit it into a 30 frames per second video format, right? And then you're going to end up getting double frames, right? And what ends up happening is it looks really choppy and bad. And the same thing happens in a video game whenever you have a high fire rate gun running on a low frame rate computer, and you get little, like bursts, like do. And I'm sure that many Phantom Forces players have experienced this in Phantom Forces, but this will no longer be the case. 2, things will happen exactly when you want them to, when you ask them to. And 3, everything will happen in order. And this is like great because it gives us it makes the recoil much more consistent, because if you get bursts of recoil where you do the gun is going to go up and down and up and down and up and down, and it's not going to be as predictable or as accurate as if you're just running it at a high frame rate. And so now with this change, low frame rate players can get the same consistency that high frame rate players get. And so this is really important and like a big feature that we've added. Additionally, one of the changes between Phantom Forces and COR is that instead of using Roblox physics, we're now using our own physics system that I designed it and developed it over the past, several years. And so we now have full control over everything that goes on in the physics of the character. And I know all the forces on the character. I can update it at any iteration rate that I want. If you are running at a very slow frame rate, you're not going to just push a little bit into a wall or teleport through walls or anything. It's all solved, guaranteed non-intersection. There's going to be no players getting outside of maps anymore. Things like that were in the that were in Phantom Forces a long time ago, and could be reintroduced now because Roblox is changing the physics engine and things.
I see.
And also stuff like, let's see. So yeah, I mean, it should just basically everything about COR is different from Phantom Forces in every conceivable way. And we've taken the animation system is totally different. So in Phantom Forces, the animations were programmed by entering numbers in basically by hand. And actually Harrison, I think Lito, I think can just explain this one better because he works more closely with the animation system that we designed, and I've been kind of not focused on animations for a while. So Harrison, I don't know if you want to.
All right, yeah. So Phantom Forces animations is basically a giant table, and then within that table you have keyframe tables with like raw C frames and like a time value, which is basically a tween. Like if you look at it on a very basic level, it's just a bunch of tweens at certain delays, and we just play the weapon animation from that. It's very basic. There's no inverse kinematics. A lot of that conceptually just came from Call of Robloxia 5, which is super outdated as well, just setting raw C frames on your gun parts. And this Phantom Forces was created at a time before Blender importing was really a thing, so we kind of entered really early into Roblox when like mesh parts weren't a thing. We had to use CSG for a long time. Blender animations were not a thing, so we never bothered to learn Blender. And now at this point, we decide, well, we'll look at Blender, we'll study what it does well and what it lacks, and then we decide to make our own animator using quaternion math so that it's more stable and very smooth. Axis can go on for hours talking about his new like quaternion C frame, or he calls it a Q frame format. Basically, it's like a C frame, but like his own style. And then we use
Okay, I
that a
see.
lot for our like animation backend for the math to do super smooth interpolation. And essentially, what I did is I took his math format, his animation tech, and made a plugin around it. And I recreated a lot of the Blender UI of like animating graph curves and keyframes, so you can have really smooth motion instead of having to manually define the motions of equations in what Phantom Forces does. Basically, Phantom Forces, you have to define your own tween equation or use some generic preset ones like smooth interpolation or acceleration tweens. And now we just drag keyframes around. It's so much easier, so much more intuitive,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a lot more powerful because now. So the Phantom Forces has a problem where if your gun model changes and you're still trying to reuse the same animation, you'll notice like the magazine is sometimes backwards or flipped in weird
Yeah, yeah.
angles, and that's pretty common. That's because the orientation of the mesh part itself is different, and so like you would have to rotate all the keyframe data in Phantom Forces animations manually by hand in order to like get the animation correctly. So drum mags need to be like modified to have their own animation compared to stick mags, because drum mags usually end up weird if you just use the animation as is.
Mm-hmm.
But with Core, Axis came up with this node-based system. He calls it basis nodes. Basically, we can put in attachment points into the model itself to define our own orientation and not use Roblox's orientation. And then with those, we can start doing like some inverse kinematics and then some like mapping, such that we can just reuse the same animation on any sort of gun model with the correct rigging. So as long as the rigging is named correctly, it doesn't matter how long the gun becomes or how short or whatever it wants. If you have to take the drum mag out sideways versus taking a stick mag vertically, you can still use the same animation for it because it just starts using the nodes for motion
Yeah.
for all the parent changes. So that's really cool. That would make our animation quality a lot better because now I can spend more time making a really good reusable animation, and I can always like take that version of the animation and just like tweak it for other guns, but like keep a lot of the base layers in there so that I don't have to redo all the magazine inserting and all the sound like timings. I just change like the posing a bit, and then maybe I'll change the timing, make this drag out a bit longer if it's like a heavier gun,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll just make everything a lot more detailed and higher quality without having to spend as much effort.
I mean, yeah, I've noticed like the M1903 animation is absolutely gorgeous, you know? So like,
Yeah, it's a
and
There's
regarding like
go ahead.
no, regarding the infinite frame rate stuff, and like I've definitely noticed that, like especially with when it comes to the, well, like it's like helped me in a way because at higher frame rates you actually get lower recoil on a lot of guns. So, you know.
Yeah, that's a big thing, big change. I do want to say a bit more about the animations.
Yeah, God.
So with a lot, so with like Blender and things, the animations are very straightforward. You have a parent-child structure for a model, and you can choose specific points at which to change the parent-child structure. And I forget what they're called, but anyway, you have to set up like basically a change frame where you line up one animation on this current structure into an animation on a different structure. So, for example, your mag is attached to your gun, but then you want to attach your magazine to your hand, right? Because you're pulling it out of the gun and you want it to stick to your hand.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, we're doing something a little bit different. At the very core of it, we don't have an explicit parent-child structure, and we have effectively kind of two levels of animation. The first level, the bottom, is kind of the animations with goals. For example, if you want to pick an item up off the ground, you want to make sure that your hand goes to that item on the ground and then picks it up and then, maybe puts it in your pocket or your backpack or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the higher level is we have kind of a like an offset animation, like animation offsets. And so recoil is an example of this. So like if you shoot the gun, it's not like you don't really have a goal to get the gun anywhere. The main thing is that you just want the gun to wiggle a bit and and move around.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, the first level, the goal, like the animation goals, this is our we have two tracks for this. We have basis 1 and basis 0. And basically, like if we want our hand to touch the magazine, we say that we want this basis node in our hand to touch this basis node in our magazine. And we can interpolate between those two, the hand and towards the magazine with that state. And then in that interaction space, we can do a bunch of wiggling around and whatever, if we, if need be, like we need to, press something on the magazine to release it from the lower receiver, or etc.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a pretty big departure, but it's also a very powerful perspective to take on animating, especially for a game when you have just such a wildly different ways to modify your firearm, as anybody can see in the current build of COR, and also in the what is the Lito? What is the place called? Yeah, the
building
gun building
simulator.
simulator. So there's a lot of stuff going on there, and there's actually a lot more that's going on between from Phantom Forces to COR, but that's just some of it. And anyway, that's why it's been like 2 years since we started building COR, just because this technology is really hard to build.
I mean,
that's
yeah,
it.
It's great that it's great that there's a lot of progress. I don't think people really know that, behind the scenes. Let's go on to the next question. Will there be a musical aspects integrated into COR? Things like victory/defeat themes, menu themes, etc.
I would love to, but I don't.
I will love to as well. So let's see. The hard reality is right now we have very little resources for sound. We don't have a dedicated sound person, and most of our gun sounds have been allocated to our Phantom Forces contractors to kind of do whatever they want with new content.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them went on their own to commission custom sound themes, some musical sound effects, which we have seen, and they're pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But they also kind of disappeared for a variety of reasons. So at the moment, yeah, we're gonna have to maybe I have to take on sound design on my own at some point, or we'll just hire someone to do it. It is a cool idea, though.
Yeah,
I mean, we're both musicians, so
we can make our own theme, perhaps.
All right, yeah. When it comes to momentum and movement techniques in COR, what were your primary inspirations? Did they come from Phantom Forces or other outside sources? And will there be newer techniques in the future, or will there be stuff taken from Phantom Forces, such as super jumping?
I see. Can I start this one off?
Go for it.
Okay, so movement that's my passion.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've ever played Siege before, but anyway, back in 2017, I don't know if it's changed since, because I stopped playing Siege back in 2017, but there were some maps where you could look at a pebble on the ground, and if you tried to walk over the pebble, you'd get stuck on it, and it's like,
oh, I see.
Oh my God, right? Why can't I walk over this little rock, right? Or, you're in a corner and you jump into the corner, and then all of a sudden you slowly vibrate down the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what is happening here? How do you fail so, you have millions of dollars behind you to make a good physics engine for your characters, and you get this out of it.
Yeah.
And, stuff like Skyrim, where it's a wonderful game and it's a lot of fun to play, but oh my God, jumping backwards up the mountain, to try to get to the top, to cheese your way to the top and whatever, that's ridiculous. And stuff especially in Modern Warfare 2019, especially Warzone, right?
Yeah.
Trying to climb over rocks in the map, just you couldn't, and then you would in real life, I can climb a wall of rock. Why can't I do that in people do that all the time, and then you die to to whatever the gas that's coming in, and it's like, well, you feel cheated. And, one of our major design principles is we want the game to be predictable and consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of different ways that things can be predictable and consistent. And we're of course trying to do the most fun one, but movement is a big part of that. And, so super jumping. Yeah. Right now, in core, if you run towards a wall, we have a physically based way of we detect that there's a wall in front of you, and it will put your legs up and push. I mean, you can't see it, but in the we do some casting to put your legs up in front of you and push up off of the wall, push up and away from the wall, so you can actually climb walls. And if you run into a corner in a correct way, you can actually do a corner wall jump, back and forth from one wall to the other, and you can go up, scale quite a bit. But it's physically based, and people don't understand physics super well in that way, because we've been trained by video games to not expect to have to do things the physically correct way all the time. Though obviously tracking a player with your gun, that's another really big thing for us, is that characters should move physically, because we have our monkey brain has evolved over millions of years to be able to track objects and throw a rock at it, right? I mean, that's one of the things that we do is people throw things really, really well, right?
Yeah.
And we want to take advantage of that hardware that we've evolved to have, and not have people have to retrain themselves to just shoot at the target and hit it. And so anyway, as far as diving goes, super jumping goes, that's something we can definitely consider adding in. Right now we have wall climbing for that, or to try to replace that, but I think probably we're gonna put super jumping back in. And I don't know, definitely everything in there. I'm currently in the process of rebuilding or rewriting the movement, at least the base functions, the base spatial query functions. Those are written, and I've poured hundreds of hours of time into those. But the physics for movement will definitely be rewritten. So there's a lot of room for things to change.
All right. I see.
Yeah.
That sounds great, honestly. But okay, let's continue. Considering core is based on World War II, will there be quote unquote red dot sites?
I'll take this one. So we are not gonna do what Vanguard did and go all out with red dot sites, but I mean, people want their sites. There are some actual examples of the reflector site that I'm sure everyone knows about, so we'll probably have some of that. But for the most part, I think the cool thing about World War II is the simplicity with iron sights. And I mean, you'll have your telescopic sights, which is just the equivalent of an ACOG sight today. Those you'll definitely see a lot of, and then your sniper scopes. But yeah, I don't know. People might end up using the reflector sight meta, maybe. We'll see how it goes.
All right. I remember in the earlier days of Fan of Forces, darkness was a prevalent aspect of the game, where in some cases you were required to use a flashlight. Will there be something like that in core, like special maps or areas where it's almost necessary to use a special attachment, such as a flashlight?
Roblox's lighting is not there yet.
Oh, I see. All right.
In order to use lighting effectively, you need Future's bright lighting. And we want people to run this on their old laptops or phones. So most likely we won't keep the Future's bright lighting. We might try and see how Framework runs with a full map, because Desert Storm, the demo we have with the Desert Storm map is not really final. Obviously, it's just a Fan of Forces test map we have laying around. So we'll have to see how we plan on using meshes and props. We're going to use a lot more mesh parts for the World War II setting. Shay's gonna get more details in his map design. Darkness is kind of a debatable mechanic to use in general, because you'll end up with the problem of Warzone, Call of Duty Warzone, where you can abuse dark corners with darker uniforms, and I don't know if we want to get into that kind of meta this point. Flashlights are cool. Maybe we can use flashlights and like light things up as sort of like an immersion aspect. It could also be used to blind people if you want to take the battlefield route. I don't know, I remember Battlefield blinds people with their flashlights, but very limited. I don't know if we'll go there, but like you can use flashlights for aesthetic reasons, perhaps. But yeah, I'm not gonna do like pure darkness game modes.
Yeah, that's fair enough, honestly. How will penetration damage work in core? That is to say, will there be a damage penalty based on material and or thickness?
You want to take this one, Axis?
Yeah, I was just thinking about this. You know, because I'm about to. The current bullet implementation we have in core is actually from 2 years ago that I kind of just quickly wrote, but you know, I'm gonna rewrite this pretty soon, and I think what I might end up doing is saying, you know, if you encounter like, okay, if you encounter a thick piece of aluminum, obviously your bullet's going to bounce off that thing. But if you encounter like a piece of aluminum foil, it's going to go straight through. So I'll have to take into account the thickness of the thing that you're trying to shoot through as to, you know, whether or not it'll bounce off or go through. And also bullets kind of tend to break apart as they go through things. So I think maybe what I should do is if you actually penetrate an object, when you exit that object, we should probably just generate a cone of damage, right? And it won't be that much, but you know, just like pieces of shrapnel that come out of the backside of that wall, because you know, the bullet's going to break apart after it's going through some pretty thick material, and I don't think it should be able to penetrate any more after that. So, in that sense, it will be probably a little bit easier if we do end up implementing this idea. It will probably be a little bit easier to hit people behind walls, but the damage you'll deal will be significantly less. And penetration will be much less overpowered as compared to how it is in Phantom Forces. But Ricochet is really cool, and we do have that in the game right now, as well as penetration, and it's like it's awesome. We could consider doing like if it bounces off a wall at too high of an angle, it could turn into a why do my monitors turn off? Okay, could turn into a like basically a shotgun, like a you know, the duckbill attachment. Well, you know, if you have a bullet that hits a wall at a big angle, it's going to turn into a bunch of like, it's going to go along the wall and like a big splatter. So anyway, that's kind of the current thoughts on that.
All right, Axis, I do have a question. So if you have multiple parts inside each other, how are you going to handle the cone shape?
Double density or average density probably. Okay. But yeah, I mean, so another idea is that we could go into the wall. Oh, by the way, this is one of the things that is enabled by having an infinite frame rate is you can go into the wall just a little bit until we have like a breaking point. So we might have two penetration values. One being how far absolutely it can go through a wall, and then the second one being how far it can go into a wall before it breaks apart and starts, you know, fanning out shotgun style.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because if you go through wooden crates, I'm pretty sure the bullet will just pass right through like butter and not break apart. It's mostly concrete. So we can have like material thresholds where it will break apart immediately, and then there's like an absolute penetration depth that's dependent on the material itself. So yeah, there's definitely two values there. And then that would make ammo types more interesting. Like you have hollow point versus full metal jackets now having more things to play with instead of just like damage ranges in Phantom Forces or whatever multipliers. So we can simulate it more like realistically in depth.
Yeah, it'll make ammo types much more interesting and useful. Yeah. Because right now in Phantom Forces, they're like,
there's something. I kind of came up with a question on the spot, but I'm kind of curious. How limited would you say you are by Roblox? Like, are there any features you want in the game that you literally can't add?
Oh my God, yes. Actually, you know, for the most part, if Roblox doesn't have a feature or we don't like their implementation of it, we can just build it ourselves, as evidenced by core and how much of the stuff is custom. But I want access to the GPU so bad.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Shaders.
I want to. So the current tracers and Phantom Forces, they look really nice and everything, but man, if I could just get my hands into the shader code and write myself some or write some pixel shaders, we would have the most beautiful tracers of any game of all time.
Yeah.
And also, yeah, if I could just get in there and write some shader code, we would have the most beautiful smoke effects of any game of all time.
Yeah. Okay, I see. All right. I know you touched on this before, but will there be equipment in core, such as health packages or maybe spawn flares?
This is something we'll probably keep an eye out for over time. Like, we'll experiment with it once we free up like the other game mechanics we wanted to add. Like, it's definitely on the table, and it's much more possible to add compared to Phantom Forces. I don't think we're going to do vehicles, so that's going to be a huge deciding factor in what kind of equipment we would want. So like, I don't know if we would want like a Panzerfaust. Like, it might be not necessary. So we'll start off with like landmines perhaps, or smoke grenades. Maybe that counts as equipment. So it's more like a tactical / equipment thing. And then you can put like bouncing betties. Maybe you can put a health pack. I don't know. This is a sort of like an open design. Like, do we want to have a tactical its own slot and then equipment? Or do we want to blend those two together into one slot and then just choose like sort of any non-lethal sort of item that you can use that's not a gun, you just like throw into that equipment slot? Yeah, we're still looking.
Two things actually, if you don't mind. The first one is, we, as far as equipment goes, I guess equipment is kind of like just extra things on top of the loadout that you choose to bring in as far as guns are concerned. But so we've been playing some Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 because it just came out.
Yeah.
And we really don't like kill streaks.
Okay.
We think they're bad game design. They're cool, but they're bad game design. But we really like perks.
Oh, I see.
So we might bring perks into core. But the second one is, Lito and I were discussing respawn, or like not respawn, but like reviving mechanics, and I just want to run this past you actually, Rubie, real quick. So we are not a fan of the Battlefield style. You get shot and then you go down and then you have to hold a key in order to kill yourself so that way you can respawn again. And also in Phantom Forces, like we effectively have that same thing because you have to wait 5 seconds before you can actually respawn, which reminds me that we should actually change that down to 3 seconds or something. But we were thinking, and I want to get your opinion on this, that whenever you die or whatever in core, potentially you go just straight back to the menu, unless you want to watch a replay. But you go straight back to the menu. You can do whatever you want in the menu. But if somebody revives you, you can either choose to get put back in the place where you died, or you can reject it and say, no, I'd like to spawn in a new location. And so this basically would be probably, we think, the best of both worlds. But I don't know. What do you think about that? And how would you change that if you would make any changes?
Personally, I feel like, okay, so the way I play very, very aggressive, and I don't really like waiting in between, spawning or in between dying, right? So honestly, that sounds like the best option if you had the option to just like respawn if you wanted to, and you could reject it if you wanted to. You're not like forced to respawn. So that sounds like a good idea, honestly.
Awesome.
Would it fit in a fast-paced Call of Duty style shooter that we're aiming for?
That's a hard question, honestly. Because
what if there's objectives? Right, okay.
Yeah, if there's objectives, I could see it, honestly. But thinking, like, I've been playing a lot of Modern Warfare lately, the new one. And the last stand perk, I just hate it because it brings to this awful like gameplay that you have to go against, because they usually just sit in the back and wait till they die, and then they can just respawn because someone shot them from far away. But I don't know if there's gonna be self-reviving. If there's not self-reviving, then it honestly sounds fine,
Yeah,
I think it'd basically be ragdolls with a timer. So as a teammate, you can go over the ragdoll and like press a button real quick, maybe like essentially you're meleeing your teammate and then you carry on with your own task, and then
Yeah.
the teammate gets a chance to respawn there essentially. Like it's like spawning without a death, but that's about it. They can also just not do anything about it and just like stay in the menu if they want. That's almost like, rather than like a revive mechanic, it's almost like a tack insert respawn mechanic if you think about it that way. And it like has the benefit of not giving you a death and it keeps your streak.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
kind of how we're looking at it.
And I'm assuming you respawn with very low health too, you know. So
Yeah, we could look into that. Yeah, like those would be pretty easy to change. It's more of a, do we let you like just get a very fast respawn? Teammate walks over, you press his button, and then you're like, oh, do you want to spawn here?
mhm.
And keep everything you have, their ammo states, your same guns and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. All right. Let's just continue, I guess. Will there be character customization? Just yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. It's just a question of how far out of realism do we want to go.
Yeah.
So there's like we had considered the option where you can just turn off non-realistic uniforms or something. Like you don't want to see bunny hoppers with bunny ears everywhere.
Yeah.
You can turn that off and just stick to like generic World War II outfits. You can do that.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have like two styles of customization. One that's like thematic, so like different officer rankings within a nation, that kind of customization. And then another is like just, yeah, you put on your bunny ears and go sparkles, whatever the trendy games do in Fortnite.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll look into both.
Yeah, all right. This is a quite specific question, and you touched on it before, and I know you guys are like liking the realism and stuff. But how focused is the game on realism regarding gun handling?
Realism is only fun when it makes you feel cool.
Yeah.
And we don't really care about realism other than historical aspects and making the player feel cool. So as far as gun handling goes, yeah, like with the 1911 and other closed bolt, actions, you shoot the gun or you start reloading the gun. Yeah, you can fire that round in the chamber because that's freaking cool, right?
Yeah.
So basically, I think that's the answer.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Will there be ranked and casual mode, and how many modes do you have planned in general?
Yeah, as far as ranked and casual goes, it's nice to have people kind of self-sort, self-select themselves into the style that they want to play. So if you want to sweat really hard, yeah, it would be nice to offer like a ranked mode to people who just want to sweat really hard, and then the people who are more casual, just they don't, right?
Yeah.
The question is, in the casual mode, do we still want to do like skill-based matchmaking, or literally just throw the new players into the fire with all the experienced players?
So I kind of have some ideas on this, right? I think Lito and I both can talk about how we really don't like the way skill-based matchmaking is done in Call of Duty and other games actually in general, because sometimes you want to sweat and sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that if you get put into a round with people who are all your same skill, you don't really get any wins and you don't really get any losses. It's always just this homogeneous soup of nothing changes.
Yeah,
right?
it's just a 1 KD all the time.
It's just, yeah, it's not very fun. And so I don't know, like in order to learn, you kind of need to be put against players who are just totally superior to you, right? Maybe you go into a fight and you have like a 30% chance of actually coming out of that fight with a win, right? Or a 25% chance or something, right? Like they're just very much better than you. And of course vice versa, it's fun to like dunk on people who are worse than you. And so if we do matchmaking, which I think we will, it will be very loose matchmaking. The goal is not to have homogeneity in every server. It's really just to have, we don't want somebody who is new, who is like effectively a bot, who is like walking into walls and has like crazy loadouts that don't work, going up against you. Right? So yeah, but we're thinking maybe people who are 3 times better than you and 3 times worse than you are okay. but like you are 100 times better than like some of the lowest players in Phantom Forces, and we don't want that kind of experience for the players who are like new to the game. Not really good at it.
Yeah, I think I've made a lot of people never play this game again by just playing the game. But yeah, all right. Do you think COR will perform to all other shooters out here, even PF itself? And if COR doesn't perform, what's your plan?
Our goal is to create the Phantom Forces killer, which is very kind of symbolic, but also funny in a way, because I think there are not many games even now on Roblox that could really challenge Phantom Forces in terms of the content. Like obviously Phantom Forces is an old game and it should be dying. It should have died a long time ago, but somehow it's still here. And we're wondering why it still is the case. Like there are many potential competitors, but somehow they all fell short in some way, or they kind of isolated themselves into a very niche audience rather than taking on the big cake that is Phantom Forces. So we're just gonna do that, take that on for ourselves. It wouldn't be too hard, I think, just from the tech alone, because I think most of Roblox first-person shooters, they're held back by like the technical aspects. Like, yeah, you can have the best animations imported from Blender, you can have the best graphics and use smooth terrain and look really good, but if you can't play it well, then it's still not going to be successful. And that's kind of what a lot of these upcoming shooters struggle with. I'm seeing it's like it's super hyped to create like a trailer and looks great, but actually playing it, like you get bored of it. Maybe it doesn't have content. So we kind of know how to solve that, because like we made Phantom Forces, so we can probably reuse the same strategies here for COR. And I think a lot of people's concerns that have been brought up is the World War II theme. What happens if there's not enough interest in the World War II theme? Like, what happens after that? Like, I think for us, like, Phantom Forces 2 is a very obvious logical step. It's like free IP from Phantom Forces, and it gets to fix all of our design choices that we made in Phantom Forces that we can redo. We can redo the entire customization system instead of like locking ourselves to 5 slots going into the battlefield side, which is kind of a mistake. We can do the full gunsmithing style that we're experimenting with COR. So in a way, COR is like a tech demo for a proper modern shooter, so we can start playing around with like all sorts of mechanics and how do we diversify our weapons. Like you have 50,000 assault rifles in the modern era, so how do you make each one of them different when they all have 30 rounds and shoot at the same fire rate? And that's kind of what COR is trying to solve. Like, what other parameters can I change? How much complexity and depth can I apply to the recoil system and make it procedurally generated, so I don't have to like hand animate everything, but still have it work kind of well. It's almost like COR is sort of this Borderlands prototype experimentation. You know, Borderlands, where they have like billions of gun combinations you can create. That's kind of what we're doing here. So yeah, that's what COR is set out to do. Also, World War II theme is severely underrated, and like I say this, like back then, World at War, Call of Duty World at War was one of the best World War II shooters out there, and they did really well without the theme holding them back. The problem with the World War II games that have come out recently, there's probably 3 that come to mind: Call of Duty World War II, Call of Duty Vanguard, and Battlefield 5. They all failed for a variety of like marketing reasons and poor executive decisions, not because of the World War II theme itself. And like, there's just so much they have not tried to explore. I don't know, like what the developers, studios are doing. But like Vanguard is just like, they just stopped trying. They didn't even try to explore like that. They don't like, what are these weapon templates? Like, I think our example with the Thompson right now in the COR gun building simulator is an example of like how much customization you can actually do and still be like reasonably grounded in reality. Like, all of these are blueprints that 𝙎𝙩 has researched and has like justification for why they could potentially be interchangeable. Like, it would not be too hard to feasibly take this part and weld it into the other part. And like, like it's like possible. It's not some weird futuristic crap that Vanguard comes up with and like never existed at all in paper. So that's like kind of what we're trying to prove out there. Like, there is substance in the World War II theme, and you can learn some lessons out of it. Like, hey, did you know there's like a Thompson variant that existed right after World War One, and it's called the Annihilator. Like, what a cool name for a submachine
Yeah.
gun. Most of us only know like the Chicago typewriter and the M1 Thompson used in the army. But yeah, there's just so much more in there that we want to bring out.
The thing with Vanguard, though, I think they just kind of gave up after they realized they weren't competing with Warzone. You know, it's just like, there was no real point.
Yeah, it's like, holy shit. I was worried a bit initially, like, oh, hey, shit, they're doing what we want to do. But yeah, we're like, nah. They kind of dropped the ball.
Yeah. All right, so how many weapons have been planned so far, and are there, well, obviously there are going to be notable ones, but something outrageous like the PTRS?
Is this screen share time?
You can go for it, yeah.
We have actually just have a spreadsheet.
Oh.
Should I just go on your computer and paste the spreadsheet into the chat?
Yeah, I'll paste the chat.
Okay.
Paste it into the chat.
All right, here we have it.
This is Shay's research spreadsheet that's like actively updated.
Oh, Jesus Christ, I didn't know there were different, like... Okay, damn, yeah.
So we're not worried about content, and this is not even including family, the gunsmithing aspect. These are just individual guns, and then you can look deeper into each variant of it.
All right, wow, yeah, no, that's... Why are there so many SMGs? Oh my, okay. Yeah, no, that's uplifting. That's exciting, honestly. Considering the enemy player models are like actual beans in the testing place, what will the finished enemy model look like?
I don't really know exactly what the final one will look like, though. We're probably going for the block aesthetic like we had in the 2020.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I remember that
demo build. But you know, it seems like a consistent theme is that we don't care about graphics as much as we care about animation, and we think it's a fair trade-off to put, one, more development time into animation than graphics, and two, put more CPU time into animation than graphics, because, you know, everybody can run it, and if you can run it at a higher frame rate, you got more fidelity and more predictability, and you know, animations, they communicate the emotion, emotion of the game, and yeah. So anyway, I'm cooking up some animations for running, and anyway, all of our animations will work in both first person and third person. So
I see.
And I do want to make a comment real quick on, I think, the previous question or two, which is that, yeah, as far as core content goes, and what other games are doing, I think it seems like a consistent theme that the other games do not have good content pipelines.
True.
And so, you know, you can get this beautiful demo going where you have two guns, you know, and the animations look beautiful and everything, but like the amount of time you actually have to take in order to implement more guns is like just exponential, and you know just takes a rewriting of the entire framework and whatever.
Yeah.
And our goal is to be able to have very good pipelines for just rapidly implementing and testing content, so that way we can just, you know, give everything that World War II has to offer to our players.
Yeah. And regarding like recent shooters and stuff like that, I feel like the only one that actually has a chance of actually performing is, if you guys know about the Games Unite testing place.
Yeah, we've played it a few times. It has the sort of CS:GO style gunplay, kind of aiming for headshots. They have really good animations. If I am correct, Falco is one of the animators for it. Although I think he also may be working for Call of Duty now, maybe.
Yeah,
not sure. There's some rumors.
But yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Right. What sort of monetization is planned for the game?
Ooh, this
like
is
sort of like a battle pass or like stuff like that, you know?
Oh god, I don't like battle pass.
I mean, So there's always the standard industry standard battle pass thing. I don't know if we want to do it. Or if people want us to do it, we can do it. It's up in the air.
Yeah.
Monetization, we are not going to do loot boxes for obvious reasons in the current environment. Even loot boxes in Final Force is probably a mistake in hindsight.
Yeah.
But what
Yeah,
we can
we
do
actually we're pretty sure that we lose money on the loot boxes in Phantom Forces also. So we both make less money and we also promote child gambling. So it's
Wait,
like that's a lose-lose.
How does that work? Wait, I'm confused. How do you lose money on loot boxes?
We give out so many just so
Oh
much.
yeah, okay.
you
Yeah.
can sell skins. So you
Yeah.
roll a bunch of skins and then you resell it, and then you use the money to buy more boxes, and then you keep doing it. And it's sort of like a recycling of funds, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, I remember when like you can sell skins for like quite a lot now. I remember when you could sell like a very rare for like 50 credits before. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like the strategy to get the melee weapons is just keep selling them, rebuying them in the tier 1 cases, the starter cases,
Yeah.
and eventually you'll get the melee. So it's kind of a weird system now that I think about it. I mean, it's based off of CSGO back then, and they seem to be making a lot of money, so we like try to model it as well.
Yeah.
But now it's like we'll probably do like a rotating shop for cosmetic items
Yeah.
every day or weekly, whatever. That's probably the safe way to do it, and still have that sort of randomization that keeps people engaged or interested.
Yeah.
Another thing we'll definitely be doing is like selling camo skins probably. And like you'll always have the ability to unlock things early, so that's like a pretty standard monetization model for a free-to-play game.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how we'll probably just change up what gets unlocked and what doesn't. So the Final Force's problem with monetization is that when you're rank 300 and anytime we add a new weapon that's below that, which is very like basically every time,
Yeah.
they get the weapons unlocked for free. And
Yeah.
that's like another huge L for the game, huge loss of revenue.
Yeah.
So for
Also,
core,
loss of content. Because then
yeah,
you don't need to
content.
work for it at all, and it's not very fun. You just get it and then it's done. It's like Minecraft updates these days.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So we're kind of changing our progression system to kind of work around this. So rather than just having everything unlocked based on your level, it's gonna be like you have to put active experience or research points into the next gun you want to unlock as you're playing the game. And if there's a new, let's say there's a new Thompson added to the tree and you're like rank 100, you've already unlocked everything in the Thompson before.
Yeah.
You would now need to replay the Thompson to start putting in EXP into that new variant sub branch,
Mm-hmm.
and then unlock that. And you can also just buy it outright, and it would be cheaper to buy it outright after since you've already unlocked the rest of the branch. So the requirements are probably based on how much you've progressed throughout the tree. So like there's still some benefit to maxing out the entire family, but still have some reason to keep playing it if we add like a small part into it.
Yeah. You mentioned skill tree, and I realized I missed a question. So that is, how will progression be? Will it be? Well, it's obviously not going to be linear like PF, but you know, how are you going to unlock weapons? Like,
yeah. So we had several ideas that to kind of borrow from. If you've played War Thunder or World of Tanks or World of Warships, they sort of have like a tier system, and the way they do it is they have different development stages of a tank or whatever vehicle throughout the years, and it starts off with the earliest one, and then you slowly grind your way to the latest one. We're not going to do this like exactly 1-to-1, but we can kind of take this idea of shared families in a tech tree, and then you like unlock pieces slowly by maybe you have to use the gun in that family, or maybe you just have a generic currency to put into this family and start unlocking it. Instead of doing timeline, like chronological order with development times, because that wouldn't really make sense for a World War II game necessarily, we'll probably do it based off of rarity in real life. So, for example, you have the Thompson. The M1 Thompson is probably the most common Thompson you'll see on the front lines because it's the standard issue. So you start off with that. And then you'll probably work towards the 1928 model, which is the next most common one in the army. And then slowly, like, it might go backwards in time to like the 1921 model, which is like the gangster style Thompson that we all know. And then the 1919 model, which is very prototype. It's like the precursor to the gangster style Thompson.
Yeah.
And then you have like these weird like annihilator model, the persuader model, which like have never really been made.
Yeah.
But there are blueprints of them, so they exist. And then those could be like the very end goals of their tech tree.
Yeah.
So we're not gonna do like the strict timeline of when they existed, but more of how often will you actually find one. So that's kind of a cool way to make sure, like, once you jump into the game, you will be seeing all the familiar weapons, and then if you want to see the really bizarre ones, you can start grinding your way through that.
Yeah. All right, there's only 5 more questions, by the way, but we'll start with this one. How frequent do you reckon updates will be for content and like new guns and stuff when it's fully released?
I don't think we are very good with update schedules as shown in Phantom Force. Unfortunately, we do not have a good track record. Ideally, we have a lot of frequent updates early on in the game when it's still kind of bare bones, and we'll probably just go ham in putting things out. But later on, once we have like a solid, like we have covered every nation essentially with like at least 1 or 2 major families in each class, like submachine guns, bolt action rifles, and so forth, we'll probably slow things down, like maybe every 2 weeks, and then every month could there be more of like a thematic update maybe. Maybe we start doing something with a national focus. So like next month or season is gonna be the Italian submachine guns, and then during the winter it could be like Finnish bolt action rifles or something like that, and then have a map that's tied to the setting where these guns are supposedly used in service. And yeah, so we'll probably kind of exponentially taper off our update rates. Early on, I think we'd basically be updating constantly, especially when we have to do a lot of bug fixes on the side as well.
All right. And regarding VIP servers, will there be a sort of admin menu for server owners where they can change like weapon stats and stuff, whatever, or set up specific party game modes?
Yeah, I think we definitely want to do something like this. Battlefield 2042, when they did that trailer, they had a really cool idea with basically letting you customize a bunch of game modes, even like setting like a World War II theme map and like setting all the rules. They had a cool server browser for that. We would like to kind of borrow that idea and see if we can do our own with this. So right now in the demo place, you have this insane sliding tech where you can kind of fly around the map almost because we are multiplying the sliding momentum a lot or something. And people like that, but it's obviously gonna destroy the pacing of the game in like a World War II setting. But we would like to let people adjust the collider stats and maybe walking speed. Maybe we can even enable b-hopping, like actual b-hopping mechanics, and then like people can have fun with that. So yeah, we want to make this pretty well supported.
All right. Will there be a stylish supported competitive league such as SEL, but for core?
Trey, Axis, what are you thinking of this? This is a bit of a trickier topic given our current experience.
Yeah. You know, if it happens organically, then I guess it happens.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough, honestly.
Like, yeah, we want to make our game competitive in some way. So, like, that's always a good direction to go into. Whether we want to endorse a league and run it on our, like, with ourselves, it's gonna be a hard call to predict for now.
I just want to make the game. I don't want to.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. All right. What will happen with Phantom Forces when core is released?
Like, Phantom Forces will be supported for years.
Yeah, it'll still be around.
Well, we'll do bug fixes, but content, I don't know. Maybe, you know, we'll keep probably adding content to it for a while.
Yeah, okay.
The biggest challenge with Phantom Forces is how difficult to train someone to understand the framework or not even the framework, but understand how to add new weapons.
Oh, I
And we
see.
had some really good contractors who knew how to do this before, but due to surrounding the various circumstances, they had to be let go.
Yeah.
And so it's been hard to find someone we can trust to just give them the entire place file to begin with, and then like have the time and patience to walk them through all the nuances of our very questionable code
Yeah.
and weapon definitions. And there's just so much content to balance around and a lot of feedback to filter out. So what I notice is the contractor position for Phantom Forces is like mentally taxing.
Yeah, no, I can
It
understand that.
like it can destroy the person. Like we can hire someone outside and they could have really good intentions, but then once they start being engaged with the community and everyone has all sorts of ideas of what should be done, they can kind of get wrecked.
Yeah, no,
And
I've
so
noticed that.
yeah,
All
so that's
right.
kind of how our problem.
And for the last question we have is, do you believe Phantom Forces can last for a long time even after Core is released?
I'd say yeah, it definitely has at least a few more years in its life, unless Roblox releases an update that completely cripples it. If it dies, it would be for technological reasons, technical reasons, rather than like the player base just giving up on the game.
You know, games die a slow death.
Yeah.
Right, unless they just get bricked.
I feel like
You lose like 50% per year. It's gonna last forever.
I feel like Phantom Forces is almost a special case though, because it has had the same amount of players for what now, like 7 years, you know? So it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably because there's just no alternative. Everyone tries to find the next Phantom Forces killer, but they end up getting disappointed, and then they come back to Phantom Forces. And obviously, they're not going to play for too long, but they crawl back to Phantom Forces and realize, wow, it's still like the premier shooter. But they'll obviously get bored of it because the content has been very slow for internal reasons.
All right, that was great. Honestly, I really appreciate you two doing this interview. But yeah.
Yeah, I hope we didn't give you too much to work with.
No, it's it's fine. It was just over an hour, so it's like, I don't. Yeah, you know. But yeah, that was it. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.